What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Jake Takes. Very excited to talk about spring practice. We're going to be breaking down each SEC team as we move into spring practice. Going to start with Auburn and Alabama, kind of dive deep in the time that we have to kind of give people an understanding of what these teams are looking for, where they have to improve, what they've lost, what's returning, who's coming in that can help. We know how many early enrollees there are now. But before I get there, I want to talk about the importance of spring practice, because I think for the casual fan, everybody thinks, oh, it's spring practice, and they're just going to go out there and go through walkthroughs, and it's not as important as fall camp, or that spring practice is more just about getting fans involved and starting to say, hey, we're moving toward this new season. Spring practice is when the team is formed. Summer workouts is when the team is formed. If you're having to rely on fall camp to form your team, and what do I mean by form your team? How are we going to practice? How detailed are we going to be? How focused are we going to be? How conditioned are we going to be? How mentally tough can we be when we know we don't have a game against another opponent on Saturday, but you have to make those practices even more important than the games on Saturday? And for a lot of guys that may have been there for 2 or 3 years, that haven't had a starting spot, this is your time to shine. This is the most important year. Maybe you're a guy that's a third-year sophomore that redshirted, or a third-year junior that hasn't started, and they just brought in this 5-star guy that's going to be coming in. He's not an early enrollee that everybody thinks is going to play. You've got to prove your worth, and you've got to do it quickly because time's running out. And what you get in spring is there's not game planning, even though there are some times where the offensive coordinator will take some defensive stuff and let the scout guys kind of give a look. If you're playing a triple option team, it's some time to kind of get some work in there so you're not just caught off guard during the season. But what you are getting is a practice structure that involves a lot of individual. You've already started installing everything. You have started installing your base stuff, because if you have to reteach the base stuff to guys that have been there in the fall, you're already behind. The race has already started. I've been there. I've been in those rooms. It is as intense in those coaching meetings in spring practice as any time ever. It's intense in that locker room. Guys are trying to win jobs. So when you think about the structure of spring practice, you're going to get your inside drill. You're going to get your 7-on-7. You're going to get your team stuff. You're going to work some 2-minute. But a lot of it is working indie, working tackling, understanding coverages. We used to call it half line. Half line's not just for the linemen. It's not just taking the left side and working a play here and taking the right side and working a play there. They've got half line for the coverages as well. Give me half the safeties and corners on this side and the nickels. Give me half the safeties and corners and nickels if you got them on the other side, and we're going to throw different route combinations at you. It's great for the receivers as well. So this is not a walk in the park, hey, let's just get through spring. Really, the only thing that doesn't matter that much is the actual game. To be honest with you, most coaches are just trying to get through it without anybody getting hurt. That game is for the fans. That game is for the fans. Now, it's great to have a guy go out and ball, but you're not going to have the starters in there for the whole game. There's a reason you see guys get taken out really early. Tank Bigsby is not going to play a lot in the A-Day game. Bryce Young, those guys that win the job, that are very valuable at critical positions, even though they're all critical, they're not going to play a ton in that spring game. So it's for the fans to be able to come in the stadium, have that experience, and get everybody excited and this, that, and the other. But the sausage is made in the practice, and it's as intense as ever. And with us being a show that covers mainly the SEC and trying to win the water cooler and keep you guys informed, you need to know what's going on, because it is a rat race. It is a nuclear arms race in this league. And if you lose spring, the season's already started. Your spring needs to be better than another team's spring in the SEC. Who can win that day? Who can win the practice? Because the teams that win the most practices are going to win the most games. And you'll hear me say it a lot. If you make practice more important than the game, then the game is easy. Let me say it one more time. If you make practice more important than the game, and this is in any sport, the game is easy. So when we talk about, and we will here in 1 second, Brian Harsin and evaluating, that's a huge part of spring, because you cannot go into fall camp not knowing what's going on. Or, well, I really don't know what we have, but you're not okay, I'm not okay, but that's okay. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. So I'm going to start with Auburn. We're going to get to Alabama. Like I said, we're going to do 2 of these at a time because we know it's rolling. Alabama starts March 19th. We obviously know Auburn starting soon. And the question I get asked the most, whether it's on social media, email, whatever, is, okay, what is Brian Harsin, and I'm speaking of him as the whole coach staff, what is the thing that he's looking for the most? Number one, Brian Harsin is smart enough to know that this game starts and ends up front. That's where it starts and ends. You look at Auburn's problems, the offensive line, not being able to rush the passer, not being able to line up on 3rd and 2 and say, we're going to shove this ball down your throat, whether it's inside zone, outside zone, gap scheme with the power, split zone, whatever. We got to be able to get a yard or two. And they are having to turn this offensive line, because I'm going to be honest with you, there's not a ton of talented personnel, and I'm not trying to take a shot. This is what it is. We're realists here. We don't just regurgitate information that gets told to us. We're going to tell you what's really going on, because we've been there, done that, seen that, and understand that. Auburn, they've got to turn up front into a fist fight. That's what it's got to turn up to. It's got to be a point of pride that when you say, I'm an offensive lineman for Auburn, people go, that's a tough SOB right there. Doesn't matter if you're the biggest guy out there. They've got to get better technically, understanding hat placement, understanding how to get off combinations and work up to the next level. And they've got to develop that chemistry with not only the quarterback, but the running backs as well. So the most important drill, and when I get Brian Harsin on this show, which we're going to get him on, the most important drill that Auburn's going to have this spring is inside drill. It's going to be that. 7-on-7's great. All this other, working your route combinations is great. But if you can't protect the quarterback and you can't run the ball, then the body doesn't work. That's the brain in the body. So I guarantee you there's going to be an awful lot of physicality early to find out who just wants to take Instagram pictures and who wants to get out there and really go move some people. And when you look at Auburn and what Brian Harsin wants to do, you're going to get outside, and Mike Bobo, you're going to get outside zone, you're going to get stretch, which in a lot of terms is really the same thing. There may just, on outside zone, you're taking a 90. On inside zone, you're taking a 45, and I'm talking about angles. It's a little bit different, obviously, the way the running back's going to hit it, even though the zone was meant to cut back. There's a different aiming point for the running back. That's a real thing, and we'll get into that later. But it's the offensive line. You've got to find some tackles, and there's not a lot on the roster. Brian Harsin's biggest problem is Auburn has 5 junior offensive tackles. That handicaps you so much from something that we talk about all the time, roster structure and roster development. You have to be balanced in your roster. You cannot lose too much at once up front on both sides of the ball. And Auburn is staring down the barrel of having a dysfunctional roster structure. We talk about they haven't signed a high school offensive tackle since 2017, which in my opinion is disgusting. And it's never going to work in the SEC or college football in general. But that era's over. And if you're looking around and you're saying, okay, well, is Rodarius Ham going to have to play tackle? I'm going to tell you who's going to have to step up. Brendan Coffey and Killian Zarer are going to have to step up. The 2 junior college guys that you sign. You don't sign that Gus Malzahn's staff signed. You don't sign junior college players to sit the bench. Coffey showed some flashes last year. He's got to get stronger. He's got to be able to anchor down against these SEC defensive ends and say, that's fine. If you want to bull rush me, I'm going to punch you right in the chest. I'm going to stop you. I'm going to drag you, and I'm going to dump you. And that's something that Auburn has not had. And outside of that, Austin Troxell, a guy that's had a ton of injuries. He's a fighter. He's tried to come back. Can he do it? Can he do it? And the jury's still out on that. I say Auburn played with more guards last year than the Houston Rockets. And it's something that has to be fixed because the guys that make you the money, and every position's important, it's amazing how they're on the edges, right? Quarterback gets paid, then who gets paid? The tackle. Then who gets paid? The defensive ends. Those guys are on the edge. So we can sit here and talk about the receiver position, which Auburn's got a bunch of unknowns. You got Kobe Hudson out there. You got Elijah Canyon, who's my sleeper to really step up. You've got Zevian Capers. We obviously know what J.J. Pegues can do at the fullback position. They're going to use him in the passing game as well, especially in the red zone. But you've got to build this thing from the inside out. So you've got to get that question answered. And I know that's going to be a focus. Will Friend is a great technician. He's a great technician. He'll get those guys right. They'll understand the expectation, the level of physicality they have to play with, but most importantly, what's going on behind me. It's not just about what's going on in front of you. You've got to know that. Oh, well, he's in a shade, which if you want to know what a shade is, it's a guy that's on either side of the center. A 0 is when they're head up the center. So a shade's on either side of the center. All right, is that guy a 3 technique, which is on the outside shoulder of the guard? 5 technique is the outside shoulder of a tackle. You have to know that because that's going to dictate who combos. That's going to dictate who am I kicking out on power. Is it a 3 down with a stand-up? It always is going to turn into 4 unless it's a pass against package. So those are the things that you've got to make sure is right. The running game is intricate. Mike Bobo's going to do a great job with it. But you look at the receivers, my sleeper's Elijah Canyon, and Cornelius Williams, who's a buddy of mine, we GA'd together, is, in my opinion, one of the most complete receiver coaches I've ever seen. Those guys understand it's about catching the ball. We know that. But it's about blocking as well. Because all these runs you see that spring for a 70-yard touchdown, wow, what a run. A lot of that is helped out not only by the guys up front that you see blocking, but those receivers keeping the corners and safeties and the nickels out of it, so you get that one-on-one matchup, you make a move and you're gone. Or maybe they fit it wrong, you make a move and you're gone. And Auburn's got to get back to that, and they have the size out there to do it. They have the ability out there to do it. Malcolm Johnson Jr., another guy that enrolled early, is a guy that has a ton of talent. Wouldn't be surprised to see him get some scratch and then really evaluate him this fall, and this spring. And they're going to find somebody that's going to step up that you may not know about, that maybe hadn't been talked about. But you got to find at least 2 or 3, and they've got to be able to play inside and outside. And that's something that, again, is important, but it all starts up front. Defensively, you look at Auburn. Derek Mason coming in. Zach Etheridge. They bring in basically a whole new staff. Burt Watts. And, I keep talking about up front, but Auburn's got to be able to rush the passer again. That's where Nick Eason comes in. I guarantee you, in pre-practice, Nick Eason will have those guys working more moves than John Travolta in Grease. Whether it's a rip, whether it's a swim, whether it's a push-pull. No more is it, all right, Derek Hall, just go bull rush somebody. And I'm not trying to knock Rodney Garner. Rodney Garner's put a ton of guys in the NFL. He knows how to coach the defensive line. But last year, Auburn just bull rushed people. It's amazing. I'm sure the tackle probably felt like a matador. And when you do that, you don't keep them guessing. Because when you play defensive line, if you have one good pass rush move outside of bull rushing, it really gives you 2 because it's a counter. We've had Brandon Graham on talking about it. Tons of guys that have done it at the highest level and had success, won Super Bowls. You have to get into your bag, and that's something I think Derek Hall may end up being an all-SEC first-teamer or second-teamer next year because he has the body to do it, has the athleticism to do it. He's just got to develop some moves. Kobe Wooten, a guy that is ultra-talented. He's an NFL player. Looked great as a freshman. I watched him cover the wheel in the bowl game. I watched him cover it. That kid is a freak. But the guys in the middle, Tyrone Truesdale, you got to step up. I don't care if you squat or clean 900 pounds. If you're not able to sit there and eat that double team, or you're not able to get pressure, and I don't mean you have to be a great pass rusher, but being able to collapse the pocket inside and out like Derek Brown did, which helped out the ends. All right, that's why Big Cat had those numbers, because quarterbacks were bailing out of the pocket so quick, they'd run right into Big Cat. How many times do you see the tackle accidentally sack the quarterback? So that's something Auburn has got to get back to, because if you can't run the ball and you can't stop the run or rush the passer, you are going to get drug. And I know Auburn beat Tennessee last year, but Tennessee was running insert right down Auburn's throat. I can't believe they threw the ball. It shocked me. So when I'm watching this, it all is going to come down to inside drill. They have got to develop some depth there. They've got to get back to being physical. They've got to get back to being feared. And that's how you do it. You don't do it by talking about it. You're doing it by having guys run into each other at full speed in the right way and find out who really wants it. Who wants it when they're a little beat up, when a finger may be broken? Who has the pride to do it? And I think that's something that has got to be found and is the biggest evaluation. And at the end of the day, I'll say it again. If you can't win up front, you're not going to win back. If you can win early, you're going to win late. And that's what it's going to come down to. So do not think that spring practice is a walk in the park. This is life or death. That's what it is for a team. And you better develop some depth. It better be quality. And people need to be pissed off. If you're a player for Auburn right now, after the way that the Georgia game went down and the Alabama game went down, when you got bullied the whole game, you ought to be pissed off. Because that's what this game's about. Controlled aggression. And it starts up front, and it's amazing how it's contagious. It's like hitting in baseball. Guys start getting hits. It's amazing how the guys that are struggling come along. They want to be part of the party too. Guy gets a couple sacks. Hey, man, I want some of those. Look how much fun he's having. I want some of that. But it's about pride. And that's what SEC football is about. That's what Auburn's football is about. So don't think for a second that this spring practice is anything more than what it is. Life or death. Appreciate you guys joining us on another edition of Jake Takes. Make sure you follow us, subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you can find us. One of the fastest growing sports shows in the country, anywhere. Almost about to hit 1 million views and downloads, and we're just getting started. Get ready for the Alabama spring football preview next. We're going to be hitting every SEC team from all the way out in Texas A&M to all the way down there in Florida. You're not going to find a better spring preview than you're going to find right here at the Jboy Show. So make sure you check us out. Talk to you later.